Okay, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to today's Strategies for Success webinar. I'm Parmjit Duggar, and I've been leading a Jisc project at the University of Nottingham that's resulted in the creation of a toolkit. This toolkit is the vehicle that we use to bring about increased synergy between institutional strategy and technology. Today I'm going to be supported by three colleagues who have been involved with our work as members of the management and of the project advisory team. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Miles Danson. Miles is the program manager at Jisc. Miles, would you like to say a few words about how the need for strategically aligned ICT was identified?
Yeah, thanks very much, Parmjit, and welcome everyone, and thanks for joining this short webinar about the new Jisc Leadership Foundation resource to support UK educational institutions in getting the most from their investment in ICT. Now, as I'm sure most of you will know, the Jisc, the Joint Information Systems Committee, supports UK post-16 and higher education research by providing leadership in the use of information and communication technology in support of learning, teaching, research and administration. While the Leadership Foundation for Higher Education provides a dedicated service of support and advice on leadership, governance and management for all the UK universities and higher education colleges. Now, the Leadership Foundation's strategic aims are committed to developing and improving the management and leadership skills of existing and future leaders of higher education at all levels. So, on the one hand, we have Jisc, which is committed to the best use of ICT across the organisation, and on the other hand, we've got the Leadership Foundation, dedicated to enhancing the skills of existing and future leaders in higher education. Now, Jisc and the Leadership Foundation have a long-standing formal partnership which is supported by a Memorandum of Understanding. And this, back in 2008, stated that the purpose of the Jisc Leadership Foundation partnership was to support UK higher educational institutions to deliver their core business mission through the strategic management of information and communication technology. Now, the aims of the partnership included to understand current awareness, practice and issues relating to the leadership and integration of technology into institutional strategies within UK higher education, to create the conditions in which higher education leaders at all levels are motivated to engage more with the strategic technology agenda within their own institutions and across the higher education sector, and to create ways of encouraging and developing this motivation and a desire amongst higher education leaders to engage and learn more about strategic technology issues. So, some fairly significant aspirational aims there, and in moving those to action, Jisc commissioned a national study, and that's highlighted on the slide as December 2008. So we commissioned a national study which reported in 2008. We decided that a report, while a good thing in itself, was unlikely to achieve embedding, uptake and change. And by January 2010, the Nottingham team had been commissioned to take that report and turn it into a resource that stood a better chance of achieving change. So to guarantee a level of confidence in the toolkit, version 1 has been subsequently field tested, and that was by 10 universities and HE and FE colleges. So a fairly significant effort there. Feedback was gathered and a new version of the toolkit has been developed. Now, it's this version that we're going to hear more about today, and I should just like to thank in advance my co-presenters for all their work to date, and I shall now hand back to Parmjit at the University of Nottingham.
Okay, thanks Miles, and we're also joined by Paul Gentle. Paul is the Programme Director at the Leadership Foundation for Higher Education. So Paul, would you like to say a few words about your role?
Thanks, Parmjit, and hello everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As Miles has said, the Leadership Foundation has worked together with the Jisc in sponsoring the development of this toolkit that we're about to start giving you a flavour of, and we believe as an organisation that the toolkit will make a real contribution to better leadership and management in higher education and further education institutions, and we're delighted to see the toolkit coming to fruition today. I'll be back a little bit later on towards the end to tell you a bit more about some follow-up possibilities, including a whole workshop day in January in central London that you might wish to take part in. I'll also be sort of keeping an eye on the chat that goes on today, so that we make sure that we are picking up throughout the course of the next hour on any points that you might raise in discussion towards the end. So thank you. Back to Parmjit.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And finally, we're joined by Steve Bailey. Steve is a senior advisor at the Jisc. Steve, would you like to say a few words about your interest in this project?
Yep, certainly. Jisc Infonet have taken over responsibility for the hosting and future development of the toolkit now that Nottingham have completed their work on it. So a little bit later, towards the end of the presentation, I will be outlining what we're doing with the toolkit, where it will now be available from via our website, and some of the resources that we're linking to it to form part of a wider suite of related resources.
Okay, so thank you, Steve. So what we're going to do then is today's webinar will introduce our work here at the University of Nottingham, and I'll highlight some of the key features of the toolkit. I'll also tell you a little bit about the deployment models that the institutions who participated in the field test found useful for securing effective engagement. We'll also be joined by Lucy Nelson from the University of Central Lancashire. Lucy will tell you a little bit about the benefits that her institution has secured. Unfortunately, we were also going to be joined by John Townsend from Liverpool John Moores University, but he's unable to join us this afternoon. So depending on how we go with time, I'll tell you a little bit about the benefits that Liverpool John Moores secured. And finally, I'm going to be inviting you to think about the related issues that you currently face at your own institutions and how the Strategic ICT Toolkit might be able to assist you. So the agenda looks like the schedule that I've got on the slide at the moment. I've planned to leave about 10 minutes at the end for your questions, but do feel free to enter your comments and questions into the chat window, which Paul and Steve will be monitoring. So before we launch ourselves into the workshop, it might be useful to know a little bit about your roles. So can you use the polling button, which is located in your participant window, to indicate which broad category on the slide describes your role? So if you could do that now, if you select A, B, C, D or E, that'll give all of the presenters an idea of where the vast majority of you sit within your own institutions. So perhaps another 5 seconds or so just to see where we are. Okay, another second or two. And okay, so if the Jisc facilitators could perhaps throw the results up onto the slide. There we go. So it looks like the vast majority of you are in roles that are other than strongly IT, senior management related, or in a member of the senior management team. So we've got a very broad spread this afternoon, so we'll try to make sure that the content we present is appropriate for everybody then. Okay, so let's have a look at the strategic toolkit, and it was developed by the University of Nottingham, and it provides a set of self-analysis tools to help both universities and colleges to analyse, assess and develop their strategic use of information technologies. The Jisc and the Leadership Foundation commissioned the toolkit to support senior management decision makers in developing towards being more strategic. Let's start again. Towards developing towards more strategically directed ICT deployments. I'll get the dentures sorted out in a minute. This project has drawn on the experience, insights and existing practices in a sample of 20 universities, which is the experience that we used to develop the toolkit, and then we went out and we tested it in 12 HE and FE institutions. Now throughout the webinar I'm going to be talking about strategic ICT maturity, so I think it would be helpful if I explained what I mean. We define the maturity of strategic ICT as a measure of how well ICT is integrated and aligned with the enterprise-wide institutional strategy, and therefore able to deliver maximum value and agility. A mature ICT strategy will allow your institutions to be more agile in meeting strategic demands within appropriate timeframes. Now, we all know that the sector is going through a lot of major changes at the moment: political, socio-economic, demographic and technological. So it's really, there's a great necessity out there for institutional leaders and senior managers to deliver a very clear institutional vision and corporate strategy, and the need has never been greater. Our research revealed that although highly developed and deployed, there is growing evidence that ICT is not always adding sufficient value to the institution, either operationally or strategically, in providing the capacity to realise the changing needs of our universities and colleges. Now, when we looked at how your institutions are delivering services, we looked at technology, information processes and people. And again, just using the polling buttons at the top of your participant window, can you just indicate to me which one of these four is currently the greatest source of issues for your institution? So if you use the A, B, C and D buttons at the top there, you can see a few people have already responded. I'm sure there's far more than that online, so if you keep going. Excellent. It's good to see that. Okay, so if there's anybody who hasn't responded, if you can do that now. Okay, so if the Jisc guys can just throw that up onto the screen and we can have a look at where the issues are. So it looks like processes are the major issue. Very few of you seem to have any great challenges at the moment that are strongly technology related when it comes to delivering the services. So I think that's quite useful, isn't it? And then so it looks like a lot of you have got issues that are centered around other things as well, and maybe we can pick that up at the very end, either through the questions, or I'm going to throw a whiteboard up on where you can comment. Okay, let's push on then. Oops. Okay, so the toolkit is aimed at both members of the senior management team within your institution and the senior IS professionals who are responsible for ICT strategy and the delivery of services. And what we're hoping to do with these is, through the use of our toolkit, is improve the integration and alignment of strategic ICT to the corporate strategy for your university or college, because we believe that that will lead to improvements in ability to realise institutional visions and goals, but also to make you more agile, whether your organisation is diversifying or growing or merging with other colleges, and we hope that it will lead to increased ICT value and hopefully get a bit of the ICT costs under control as well. But we do recognise that all of your institutions have a unique profile, and that was one of the big challenges that we faced in putting together a toolkit that was appropriate to the different experiences that you have in terms of market position, strengths issues, and your ambitions for the future. So whilst there's no single approach to the formulation and implementation of strategic ICT, there are elements and practices that we can learn from and use to develop a more effective approach while still maintaining your institution's unique profile. So this is what the toolkit is. It measures the maturity as an alignment and integration of your ICT to your institutional strategy. We've tried to come up with a toolkit that is generic so that it will support those unique profiles that exist within your institution. We also think it's a great vehicle for creating greater strategic awareness amongst your ICT teams or IS teams, and then also I think it supports your institution in being able to identify where you can get the greatest benefit in terms of potential for improvement, and also help you build a case for change as well. Let's have a look at the toolkit itself. The toolkit is structured to be flexible and to allow you access across three key areas. So you'll see across the slide there we have the knowledge base, a set of case studies, and then the self-analysis element. So the knowledge base provides information that provides the awareness of the factors that impact and influence your institution's strategic use of ICT. And we've identified 6 enablers that you can see in the left-hand block there. We've then provided some case studies that give you indications of organisations that are at various maturity levels, and we call those maturity levels operational, strategic or transformational. There's not enough time today on this webinar to discuss those in detail, but we'll show you where the toolkit is at the end and you can read up on those. And then the final part, perhaps the most important part, is the self-analysis element of the toolkit, and that is offered across two perspectives. One of institutional maturity, and then another one that looks at the individuals and their disposition towards strategic ICT, which is why we've called it Individual ICT Strategy Savvy. So we've got these two elements. So the toolkit provides this self-analysis across the two perspectives of institutional maturity and individuals' disposition to strategic ICT. The institutional self-analysis uses the key enablers that I highlighted, the 6 key enablers that provide a maturity assessment and also some guidance for improvement for your institution. However, with ICT embedded across most of your institutions, probably all of your institutions, it's important to recognise the role of management, both individually and working as a management team, which is why we included the ICT strategy savvy element as well. And that strategy savvy analysis, of course, is specific to an individual and will look to assess their disposition, how they contribute, how they engage, and how they undertake activities within your institution. Let's just have a quick look at those 6 enablers that I spoke about, because they were the subject of much discussion during our field tests. But these were the ones that we felt were important here at Nottingham with regard to how we chose to define ICT maturity. So right at the top you can see strategic leadership, and we felt that was important because it provides the vision and articulates the institution's mission and ethos. So working around clockwise, ICT services, because historically ICT services are associated with institutions' infrastructure and seen from the institutional perspective as responsible for the technical delivery of ICT. However, in order to support an institution in realising its business objectives, ICT services must align itself to the institution. Carrying on, ICT governance, because as a major investment, ICT is expected to deliver value, and we believe it, and we found that it delivers greater value if it's strategically enabled, rather than being influenced by a stream of diverse tactical initiatives. So effective ICT governance for us really seeks to answer 3 questions. What decisions must be made? Who should be making these decisions? And how are they made and monitored as well? Communications and engagement came out as a very important enabler for many of our field test institutions because it's embedded right across our ICT is embedded right across our institutions. Its strategic planning and implementation provides, well, I'm sure you'll agree, additional communication challenges. Universities are built on history and culture and ambition and require lots of communications, but you'll find that within our organisations we've got sub-units and sub-departments that have their own histories and cultures and ambitions and bring with them their own politics for the free flow of information. Carrying on, the 5th one was ICT shared services, and for us shared services is just one of a number of strategic sourcing options that a university or college can choose. What we see shared services as being one of a number of ways in which universities and colleges can become more agile and sustainable. And finally, enterprise architecture. We felt that this was important because the horizon for any strategy that references technology, I don't know what you feel, but it's probably no more than about 2 years. But if you've got the principles and the architecture in place, then you've got a framework for dealing with new things as they come up, because you can reference them against what you already have and against the corporate strategy and see if they fit. Enterprise architecture at the higher level is a nice strategic technique designed to help senior managers achieve business and organisational change, and we felt that was important. We felt it was important that should be included. So those are the 6 enablers that the institutional analysis is based upon. The individual strategy savvy, which focuses on individuals who are responsible for the delivery of strategic ICT, seeks to assess the perspective of individuals' disposition and engagement. And what we do there is the questionnaire focuses, as you can see from the diagram, in 3 key areas. It really focuses on the role of the individual and their opportunity to contribute, their awareness and their commitment to the institution's strategic objectives, and finally their personal success in helping to deliver against those strategic objectives as well. So let's have another poll and let's see how you feel. Now, what I like is an indication of which of these benefits that I've outlined on the slide you feel are most important for you and your organisation. So again, using the polling buttons, if you could respond A to D in terms of which ones are you feel at the moment are the most important for you and your institution. Okay, so I've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 coming in nicely. Perhaps everybody, if you can just have a look at that. So I'm asking you to use the polling button. That's just under your name on the list of participants. Okay, so it looks like everybody who wanted to respond. Nope, a few more trickling. Go on then, it's okay. Yeah, another few seconds. Okay, and if the guys could then just throw up the results for us, please. Okay, so it looks like for the majority of you, delivering institutional agility and sustainability has just narrowly pipped increasing management awareness and the momentum to work together more strategically. That's great. I mean, this is something that the toolkit can most definitely help you achieve. So what we'll do is we'll give you some URLs at the end of this presentation where you can either view the toolkit and the information that's contained within the toolkit online, or if you prefer, you can download both electronic or PDF copies that you can keep locally and that you can adapt to your own institution's specific situation. Okay, what I wanted to do, I threw this slide in because I wanted to make it very clear exactly what the toolkit is and what it is not. So we believe the toolkit is a strategic tool. It'll help you sort of bring about change in your organisation and seek improvement in how your ICT strategy is aligned to and linked to your institutional strategy. And we found, and the organisations that participated in the field test found, that it's a great tool for improving awareness. But what it is not is a quick way of determining the quality of your ICT services or a quick way of identifying where your ICT strategy needs to be updated. Now, one quick message that I do want to share with you, though, is that whilst it was designed to be used at an institutional level, a number of the field test partners used it for subsections of their institution. So there were individuals who were just looking at teaching and learning technologies or looking at a particular academic unit, perhaps a faculty within their institution, and we found that that works very well as well. So there's quite a considerable scope to mould this to your particular requirements. The project framework itself, that's displayed on the slide at the moment, includes 5 distinct stages, as you can see. A set of questionnaires organised by a strategic enabler are available for completion either selectively or by enabler. So it's up to you how deeply you want to go into the information unravelling. The full questionnaire will take about 30 minutes for each respondent to complete, and we'll produce once you've analysed it, a maturity report at the institutional level. But the field test partners found that quite a reasonable amount of effort was required to collate all those responses in and put the data into our tools, the spreadsheets that we've provided. Once you've done that, though, you do get a self-analysis. You get a results profile that will tell you whether your organisation is managing to harmonise its people, processes, and resources in order to deliver ICT that is aligned and that is able to meet your institution's strategic goals. And so maturity will be measured by establishing levels of awareness and commitment, use and experience, as well as realised benefits and measures of success against each of those 6 enablers that I told you about earlier on. And your answers will reveal your current position and indicate where there are areas for improvement. And you'll come out at one of three levels. Either you'll be your assessment will be transformational, which means that you're a very agile university with a strong focus on institutional needs, or you'll come out as strategic, which means that you've got mature operational capabilities with a high dependence on ICT, but you're not perhaps as agile and as responsive as perhaps a transformational university. Or you might come out as an operational university or operational service provision, which means that you're providing reliable and satisfactory performance from your IT or IS functions and delivering a good service level, but you don't exhibit the traits of strategic or transformational units. And the individual strategy savvy analysis, which was about assessing individuals' personal contribution and providing a profile for them personally for self-analysis and improvement. It's not meant to be a broad institutional assessment of individuals. It's something that they do for themselves. We found that this activity is really enhanced by the use of facilitated workshops for groups or providing mentors or coaches for the individuals undertaking this activity. And it's clearly dependent upon the accuracy of the information that the individual chooses to provide, which is why I think it's important that they complete it for themselves rather than for the institution. But it does provide a really good starting point to defining where that individual is now, providing them with a personal profile, like the one that's displayed at the moment, for their own consideration and development. And it's important to realise that whilst we might want to achieve a full 10 on each of the elements of the individual strategy analysis, that's not always necessary. In reality, success comes from increasing opportunity and awareness and utilising the commitment and effectiveness of management to achieve success. So I think that's important, and we will be sharing these slides with you, and you'll be able to read the balloons in a bit more detail than you perhaps can through a whistle-stop tool like this. Excuse me. Finally, before we get into some comments from our field test partners, I just wanted to say a few words about strategy deployment. Just bear with me while I just have a drink of water. Okay, so you can see there that we've got three primary deployment models. And these are identified through the field test partners. The deployment techniques did vary quite considerably amongst the field test partners. Some of these strategies some of these deployment models are most suited to obtaining a broad view from a wide range of respondents, while others are better suited to situations where it would be better to spend more time with a smaller cohort to obtain a deeper, richer picture. Many of the field test institutions chose to place their questionnaires online, either in the original questionnaire form or with modifications for language that would perhaps be alien to your own people. And those who put the tools online put the questionnaire online using tools such as SurveyMonkey found that it enabled a more efficient and reliable end-to-end respondent engagement and simplified the data collection, coding and analysis task that followed. So when you're selecting which deployment model you want to consider, then do think about your own available time and your respondents' time. Think about where your respondents are physically located. Some of you have got quite distributed institutions, and also have a bit of a think about their existing level of strategic institutional knowledge as well. Okay, lots and lots of chat from me, but let's hear from somebody else now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the Jisc guys to just put Lucy Nelson from the University of Central Lancashire up. Lucy and her university were one of the 12 field test partners. So I'm going to invite Lucy to just come online for about 5 minutes and tell you a little bit about the benefits that they secured.
Hello, I'm Lucy Nelson, and as I said, I'm from the University of Central Lancashire. We obviously had the field test for Strategic ICT Toolkit, and we were expecting to score a very high maturity level. We have centralised ICT service, We have an information strategy that is aligned to our medium-term strategy. Our Director of Learning Information Services, which manages all the ICT at UCLan, is a member of our strategic management team and the Director Academic team. So we felt after a review of the knowledge base within this toolkit that we would probably achieve a very high maturity level, and indeed when our director filled in all the self-analysis exercises, he came out with a very high level of maturity, and his opinion of where the institution was also scored very highly. But it actually wasn't the case when we did the toolkit with others in the university, and actually we scored at an operational level, but we think a lot of that was to do with misunderstanding of the questions that they were answering in the toolkit and also what was actually going on in UCLan. So we approached the toolkit in two ways. We sent the self-analysis exercises out to all the heads and associate heads of schools and services, as well as senior ICT professionals within the university, and they filled them out and sent them back to us individually. For the institutional analysis, we targeted senior strategic leaders, so members of our directorate team, members of our senior management team, heads of services as well, so our facilities management, our strategic development service, and our student academic support service, and asked them to fill out the institutional analysis. We did this face to face so that we could sit down with the individuals and explain some of the terminology to them, and also have a discussion around some of the points that they were answering. And actually that side of the toolkit was probably one of the most useful elements of it for us, because it wasn't just them scoring certain questions, but they were actually talking to us and explaining to us why they were scoring that way, or explaining some of the issues that they found with the way ICT fits in with the university, and just generally being able to feedback and comment on the way our strategic projects are run and their understanding of the governance of them, which was actually quite often very different from sort of what was on paper of how our strategic projects are run. So before I start with the benefits, I'll sort of talk about some of these issues that we had. As I said, there was an understanding of what they were actually answering the questions about. So some of the terminology and language perhaps isn't the language that we use at UCLan, and we didn't change the toolkit in any way. We sent it out as is, which on reflection now, we might have been better off if we spent a little bit of time going through and translating it into the language used at UCLan. Also the issues we've talked about in the chat room as well, of what the sections actually meant. So for example, we were talking there about shared services. Well, when we started answering the question came up, are we talking about shared services externally or shared services internally? Because we felt that internal shared services were one of the elements that achieved strategic ICT maturity. So we focused ours on internal shared services, and that gave us a much higher score. If we'd focused it on external shared services, we would have scored very low scores, because there's very few that we actually use, and we don't think that anybody within the university is really aware of them at all. Some weren't aware what shared services meant at all, so we had to explain to them that it was the fact we had a central ICT service and that provided ICT to the entire university. So those are some of the issues and problems we faced, and also we felt that some people just misunderstood the question or simply weren't aware of what was going on in the university, so their opinion of what was happening wasn't actually what was happening. A classic example was that somebody said that they disagreed that we had an institutional strategy that was approved by the senior management, when actually we do. I think it was at the time when they filled in the questionnaire, the latest version of that strategy was being completed, and so they thought it hadn't been signed off yet and therefore ticked no. So a lot of that impacted the scores that we got. But as I said, the discussions with people were exceptionally useful, and that mixed with the results of the toolkit were what we developed our recommendations on. So the benefits of the toolkit were it created basically an opportunity to discuss issues around ICT with senior managers, and sometimes they felt that they didn't really have the opportunity to have those discussions because everyone's just getting on and doing things at the moment and running the projects and just facing those problems as and when they come up. But actually the chance to stop and reflect about how the way we do things was very much welcomed. I've been going to the Jisc Enterprise Architecture Practitioners Group, now the Strategic Information Practitioners Group, and we've been exploring enterprise architecture and how it could be of benefit to UCLan, and the results of the Strategic ICT Toolkit have certainly enhanced a business case to introduce it at UCLan, and also given us an opportunity to revisit our current governance and identify where the issues and problems might be. It's also helped us to understand the perception that people have across the institution of ICT at UCLan, and we've discovered that the understanding is very different to what we think is actually going on. So we've identified there's a really big gap there, and particularly around communication and engagement, that we're going to have to do a lot of work on to get people to understand exactly what is happening and why it's happening, and their role within ICT and how we align it with university strategy. I think it's also started to have an impact on the way we think about projects. From the Strategic ICT Toolkit, we had a series of recommendations that have been presented to members of the senior management team, and I'm starting to notice now that we are talking about how we look at our projects and how we ensure that they're business-led, and bringing together people within the business to look at the business processes that the ICT is going to support rather than the ICT itself. And as I said then, we have a series of recommendations that came out of the project, and we've been lucky enough to secure a Jisc transformations project, which is going to be reusing the Strategic ICT Toolkit to review the recommendations that we came out of our original field test, build on them from what we've learned from the Strategic Information Practice Group, and then hopefully that will lead to the implementation of enterprise architecture at UCLan. So that's a very short summary, and I'm sorry it was quite a lot of information. But we've also, I'll post a link to the project website, which has got our outputs and our reports as well, so that people can have a look through them.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucy. Now, I was also hoping to have John Townsend from Liverpool John Moores, but unfortunately John is not able to join us. But what I'll do is very quickly just tell you a little bit about what they did. The initial aim of their project was to baseline their current maturity across all areas using the self-analysis toolkit at an institutional level, and solicit responses from the membership of their 3 ICT governance groups: the Information Management Group, the Development Programme Group, and the IT Steering Group as well. The expectation was that the project would support the view that they needed a major focus on service design and service delivery, although this might not prove to be the case, and they were quite happy to consider the findings and incorporate them in future planning. So the self-analysis questionnaire was deployed to members of their information management governance structure. Members are largely members of the strategic management team and senior IT managers as well. So presentations were made to each of the groups covering the background to and the purpose of the toolkit, following which the questionnaires and a form to record the evaluation of the process were made available to them for them to download from a Liverpool John Moores website and then resubmit it through that website as well. As part of the project, what they ended up doing was developing a developments without architecture policy and process, which they felt was extremely important, and this was approved by the Information Management Steering Group, and it was incorporated within the ICT service definitions as they were implemented. The strongest areas, as revealed by the survey, were strategic leadership, ICT governance, and enterprise architecture. One of the things that surprised them was the number of don't know responses that they received, particularly in relation to enterprise architecture and shared services. So that really suggested to them and made them aware that there were particular areas within the university and within their own ICT teams where awareness raising would be beneficial. The most consistent low scores were in areas related to communications, so this is an area that they've now focused on. One of the things that they were overjoyed about was that the project had raised awareness with senior managers and members of the ICT governance structure of things that they should be thinking about in relation to effective deployment of ICT in HE. It also validated their service-based approach to the redesign of the ICT function, which they were already working on prior to the project as well. And having not carried out an exercise like this before, the toolkit effectively became a benchmarking exercise. So they've recommended now that the exercise is repeated in 2012 and possibly annually after that. they've recommended that significant effort is now being put into improving communications and raising awareness about the contribution that effective deployment of ICT can make to the delivery of strategic objectives. So that all sounds rather good, and it's helped them to get to where they need to get to. And I should have just thrown up the Liverpool John Moore slide then as well. Not to worry. Okay, so that's probably the vast majority of the content that I'm going to be talking to you about. But what I'd like to do now is just hand over to Paul Gentle, who you heard from earlier on. And Paul, can I invite you to perhaps just talk a little bit about what the Leadership Foundation will be doing with the work that we've done so far?
Yes, thanks very much. I'd like to just highlight two of the specific programs and events that we run that we think might be of interest to the audience taking part in the webinar today. The first of those is a long-term developmental program, really, for individuals who have aspirations to develop their leadership and their management capabilities further. So if you're somebody who works in information or library services in an institution of higher education, and your institution is prepared to sponsor you for quite a significant, quite an in-depth program that runs over a whole calendar year, then the Future Leaders program could well be of interest to you. It's designed to identify middle managers with potential for going further, for leading perhaps beyond the boundaries of their current functional responsibilities and leading at a strategic as well as an operational level. Very much draws on not only this toolkit but a lot of the other resources that Jisc have developed and made available. One of the things that is a significant focus of the program is working on a project over the full year, which is an institutional-based, work-based project in which we work alongside colleagues from Jisc to identify particular tools and approaches that might help you in making your project more realistic. You'll work together on this program with a cohort of 18 or 20 other participants and form a very, very valuable network which is likely to be useful to you in your future career. So if you're interested in that program, applications are currently open, and they're open for another month or so, as you can see from the slide there. And the URL that's provided there will give you as much more information as you might need on that program. We look forward very much to hearing from you, or perhaps staying behind and chatting afterwards, after this session ends, if there's got any particular inquiries that you'd like to raise with me. The other event to highlight is the full-day event coming up on the 12th of January in London, which is an opportunity really to showcase and demonstrate in much more depth what this particular toolkit can do, and for an opportunity to get hands-on with that and to really explore the possibilities of how it might contribute to strategic management change in your institution. We'd very much like to encourage you to think about applying for and coming along to that session. The web link there gives you more information on the day itself and also how to register for it. But that should be a workshop format and would work extremely well with something like 10 to 15 participants altogether. So we really do welcome your applications and encourage you to come along. Back to you, Blanket. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. And finally, I'm going to be handing over to Steve Bailey, who's the Senior Advisor at Jisc, who will now be taking the toolkit and integrating it with other resources that Jisc have. Now, just before I hand over to Steve, I'm going to apologise for the next slide, which is going to look a bit of a mess, and that's basically because it was my fault that I didn't upload it and test it in time. So, Steve, can I pass over to you, please?
Thanks, Parjit, and thanks for everything you've done so far. I think this marks quite a neat handover, in effect, because the Strategic ICT Toolkit is now being handed over from the University of Nottingham. It's leaving its kind of project footing, if you like, and we at Jisc Infonet are taking it on from here on and developing it into the future. And what I wanted to do was spend a little bit of time now just going through how we've approached that and what our plans are for the toolkit in the future, and a few related initiatives and resources that you may well find of interest that very much relate to this agenda too. You'll see a URL at the bottom of the screen there, and will be repeated on the next few slides. And this is really hopefully one of the main means now for accessing the toolkit, because what we've done is to integrate the tool with some other resources within the Jisc Infonet stable, some existing ones that you may well be aware of, and some that are actually new to this resource today, to create a new delivering the technology enhanced institution resource. So trying to put the toolkit in a wider sort of context. As you'll no doubt have gathered by now, the Strategic ICT Toolkit is envisaged very much as a strategic level enabler. Clearly it will be of interest and use to the IT professional and manager, but the intention is that it's a strategic analysis and decision-making tool for the entire enterprise, rather than a more narrowly focused IT-specific resource. So it's for this reason that we've positioned the toolkit alongside our existing strategy infokit, which many of you will be aware of already, which is an online resource which encompasses all aspects of strategy management, from the formation of the high-level building blocks of strategic direction, mission, vision, value statements, those sorts of things, to successfully realizing these objectives by turning strategy into action. Through this agenda, we also revisited the work of the Jisc Information and Strategies Initiative, which those of you with particularly long memories will recall Jisc devoting significant resource to in the mid-1990s, actually coincidentally also based out of a Jisc office at the University of Nottingham at the time. What we did a year or so ago was to revisit that work and the findings, and to reassess its relevance for institutions today. And that again can be found from this link that you can see on your screen below. So then, moving further around clockwise, we come to one of our newest resources, which was only launched early this month, Improving Organizational Efficiency, an objective on just about everyone's minds at the moment. And it's a suite of resources aimed at helping institutions respond to pressures to do more for less, whilst meeting increasing expectations from stakeholders, particularly learners. It's less about quick fixes to immediate problems and more about strategic approaches to ensure that we're applying technology effectively in support of vision and goals. We've blended established good practice in the strategic application of technology with the outcomes of a range of projects trying new and emerging technologies in the sector. And a lot of the material from this comes from the recently completed Jisc Flexible Service Delivery Program, which again some of you, indeed many of you, will probably be familiar with. Certainly institutional experience is always a vital element of all our resources, and of course, as we've already heard, the Strategic Information Toolkit has already been extensively road tested by a range of institutions. We heard from Lucy just now. And what we've done is pull together a range of their experiences of using the SICT within institutions, decisions they took regarding implementation and the lessons they learned. And I would strongly suggest that any institution considering using the tool would do well to read these brief case studies before starting out themselves. It's an opportunity to learn from the experiences of others, to see what worked well, what didn't work quite so well, and to give some ideas about how things might work out in your own institutional context. And then finally, just completing our sort of tour around the board, as it were, and at least we forget the I in SICT stands for information. And regardless of the context of the specific systems or technology involved, the information an institution creates and uses will have its own management requirements. And our Managing the Information Lifecycle infokit guides you through these requirements via 4 phases of the life cycle, which all information will inevitably pass from its creation and active use through to semi-active and final disposition. And the idea is that by thinking about some of these future requirements in advance, for example when planning a new system or process, an organization can avoid significant problems down the line. As part of the delivering the Technology Enhanced Institution resource that we're launching today, I'm also pleased to announce the release of our new measurement tools portal. Now clearly the SICT has been the focus of our discussions today, but I'm sure you'll all be aware that alongside it over the years, Jisc have also funded a large number of tools designed to help institutions to analyze and particularly to measure something they do, either in a standalone way or against a predefined set of criteria. Now the problem has always been, or at least it has been to date, that there's been no central home for all these tools, no one place where they can all be accessed. Instead it's often been a matter of knowing which program funding the tool in question, or even of actually knowing the tool exists before setting off to find it. Now, although I've emphasized what all these tools have in common, that is that they all measure something, clearly they're all designed to achieve something different. Perhaps it's the specific subject matter to which they relate, records management, green ICT, information security, something like that. Or perhaps it's the type of tool that they represent, some sort of calculator or a maturity model. Or maybe it's the nature of the outputs and whether they deliver qualitative or quantitative data. And what we at Jisc Infonet have been doing is working hard in recent months to identify as many Jisc-funded measurement tools as possible, some new, some old, and to describe and catalogue them in a consistent manner, and to provide multiple ways of identifying the tool that you're most interested in and accessing it from one place. And yes, of course, I'm pleased to say that the SICT is one of the 29 tools that we've found so far. This is very much going to be an emerging piece, a resource that keeps being elaborated upon as time goes on and new resources come to light. And what you can see there is a screenshot of the front page for that, which gives you a way of specifying what sort of tool you're interested in according to your criteria. Also, which doesn't appear on this screen, there's an A to Z list as well, so if you do know it's the SICT you're after, you can go straight to it. And of course, every page, as well as giving some contextual information about it, when it was produced, who produced it, when it was last updated, contact details if appropriate, it also provides a URL to the tool itself. So hopefully this will become a very important site for those wishing to analyze or measure some part of their institutional practice. So that's everything as is. Looking a little bit further to the future, we're beginning to think about how best to develop and work on the SICT and indeed similar tools into the future. And between 2009 and 2011, Jisc funded a program that helped institutions focus on 3 core themes: efficiency, effectiveness, and enablement. And enterprise architecture, as many of you will know, was seen as one of the key enablers of this work, helping institutions to link mission and goals, processes, information technology. And as part of the program, Jisc set up a practice group, which was mentioned earlier on, the URL of which you can see there as well. It's a Ning social networking site. And the idea was to help those involved learn by doing things together. The approach was seen to be extremely helpful, and many of the projects listed it as being extremely beneficial, helping them to move forward more quickly. What we'd like to do is to build upon the work of the Enterprise Architecture Group and create a space, or perhaps even a series of spaces, that fosters emerging practice groups. So, for example, if there were significant interest, we could quickly set up an area specifically devoted to the Strategic ICT Toolkit, where people could share ideas, experiences, and learning, as well as providing further feedback to Jisc. It'll provide added value by opening up the work of Jisc to a much wider audience, allowing anyone from the sector to get involved, not just those that have received specific Jisc funding for a particular project. We're in the process of finalising plans for this space, so it's very much to sort of watch this space, and hopefully we'll update you in the near future as we take this idea forward. Also looking to build on the launch event today. You've heard about some workshops that the Leadership Foundation have already got in mind and planned, and you've got the contact details for those. And certainly Jisc are also interested in offering the opportunity to participate in a workshop to help you get started in using the tool based on the experience of others. And certainly it would be useful for us in terms of planning, just to let us know whether you would be interested in receiving further information on that in due course, so that we can get some sort of idea of uptake. So perhaps if you could use your voting buttons, I think for probably one last time, it would be useful just to get some sort of idea on that. I can see a good range of responses coming in already. Certainly the indication as I'm watching the totals go up is very much in favour at the moment. We'll just give that a few more seconds, and then perhaps we can get the results of that pulled up onto the screen. Yeah, pretty overwhelming, and certainly that gives us something to build upon, and something that we will no doubt get back to you with over the next few weeks, perhaps just after Christmas, when we start thinking about how best to go about embedding the Strategic ICT tool within the sector. So I think that's pretty much all that we had to say with regards to the tool, its development, the work of Jisc Infonet and the LFHE. There's a few final housekeeping things that I just wanted to address. Just to let you know that there will be a recording of this webinar available on the Jisc website very shortly, so do keep an eye on that if there's anything that you missed or whether you think it would be useful for colleagues to have access to it. You'll be able to not only access the commentary but also the slides and all the text chat that's gone alongside it as well. And also just to point out that this is obviously one of a series of webinars that Jisc run periodically, so do keep an eye on the website if it's the format that's of interest to you. Lastly, before I really sort of hand over the floor, as it were, to you, the audience, it's just the last bit of housekeeping, and please don't take me up on it right this very second, but when you do leave the session, it's just a reminder to go to the help menu and then click on leave session rather than just closing it down by pressing the cross or whatever. It just helps tidy up things from the admin perspective. And it also means that you'll then receive a feedback form about today's webinar, which hopefully should only take a few minutes to complete and will be very important to us in terms of not only thinking about the SICT and this webinar, but also for the planning of future webinars. So with that said, I know we've got about 5 minutes left of the scheduled session. I'm sure a lot of you with busy diaries will need to run at the dot of 3 o'clock. Our contact details are there if you want to pick up on anything outside of this session. By all means, please do. We will also be hanging around, lurking as it were, after the official end of the session after 3 o'clock. So if you wanted just to ask questions of us individually or something you didn't want to or have chance to in the middle of the session, then by all means do. So finally, I'll open up to the floor. I'll put this slide back up in just a second in terms of, it'll be really useful for us as a whiteboard functionality within Collaborate where you can actually type direct into the screen. And it'll be useful for us to know if during the course of the last hour you've heard of anything which are actions that you really think you're going to go away, perhaps not immediately this second, but within the next few days or weeks or months, that you think would be a priority for for your institution based on what you've heard today. So with all that in mind, I will now be quiet, apart from saying thank you very much for those who took part in the webinar, particularly to Lucy, and also thank you very much everyone for attending, and I sincerely hope that you find the tool and its related resources of use.
And just before we go, Steve, I'm going to bring it back to the response question slide in a minute. Just like to move it on to the final thank you slide, where you'll find the URL for you to be able to download the toolkit, or for you to be able to look at it online as well. Okay, so thank you very much, and I'll move it back to the response question, which is, what actions are you going to prioritize as a result of the session today? You can use the text boxes on the left-hand side of the whiteboard area to just type things in there, and if you can do that, and as Steve said, the rest of us will lurk, using his word, and we'll be available to answer your questions. So thank you very much. Oh, by the way, should have really mentioned, if you would like to ask a question, if you can just use the raise hand symbol that's on towards the top of your participants window, then we can call you up and open your mics.
Just to pick up on a couple of the points that were raised in the chat room during the webinar, there was an early interesting discussion around the sort of definition of maturity. Does that imply a final endpoint, or is it an ongoing journey? And a couple of exchanges around that, but I don't know, Parmjit, if you've got any views on that. And then a point that's I think not quite been resolved yet was just on the applicability of the toolkit materials to beyond the HE sector. Is it HE specific or is it indeed broader? And I guess that would include the FE sector, for example. So those are a couple of things not yet fully dealt with from the chat.
Parmjit, from your experience, just thinking about what Paul just said there, do you feel that the tool is distinctly and deliberately HE specific to the exclusion of other possible sectors, perhaps some related and some completely unrelated, or do you think that you know, the work involved in terms of unpacking its direct relevance and specificity wouldn't be justified?
Hello, I've just said a whole load of things in response to Steve's question and realised that I didn't have my mic turned on, which is not a great deal of help. I'm just responding to Steve's comments. We had 3 colleges that participated in the field test, and all of them were able to derive value from the deployment of the toolkit. What they found they needed to do was to have a very careful look at the language that was used in the toolkit and also in the questionnaire sets. So, for example, not everybody could relate to the term SMT or senior management team, so they changed those terms to whatever was applicable to their own management structures. So I think, yes, it is applicable, just needs a little bit of care, and the language needs to be reviewed and make sure that the segmentations in terms of units within your institution are relevant, and if not, then change the terminology. The other part of the first question that Paul raised with regard to advancing maturity, what we found was that whilst we've got this pathway from operational through strategic to transformational, at each stage, depending upon what part of the university you want to look at and the range of issues you want to look at, you can always extend the concept and definition of maturity beyond what you have done on a previous instance. So, for example, you might apply the toolkit to just a given part of your operations or to a particular segment of your teaching and learning strategy, for example, and then later on you might want to open that up to a greater number of units within your university or a larger number of schools to look at institution-wide profile, or you might want to look at a new area amongst the enablers that we've spoken about. And at each stage you will secure an advancement in maturity, and of course that's a never-ending journey. So, yeah. Have we got any other questions that came up either through the chat, or if anybody would like to just ask a quick question? I didn't see any hands up at the moment. Hi guys, I didn't realise I'd switched my mic off. I'm back on again.
I think we all seem to be questioned and discussioned out.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
Drawn to a close. I guess it probably makes sense now to formally and completely close the session now. The email addresses, hopefully people took note of if there is further discussion, and obviously the full recording will be up on the Jisc website in the not too distant future as well. So if there are any other people still out there, then thank you very much indeed for your participation, and I hope you found it extremely useful, and hope to see or hear you again on a webinar in the near future. So thank you very much indeed.
And if I could just ask the moderators and speakers to just move back into the moderators room. I'd just like to have a quick word, please. Perhaps